Now, as I mentioned earlier in the program, Bonita Mabo has recently been confirmed as the patron for the national representative body for Australian South Sea Islanders, and that body is called the ASSI.PJ. And I'm joined in the studio now to discuss this further by Emelda Davis, the president of Australian South Sea Islanders Group, and Auntie Shireen is also with us, but joining us on the line as well is Professor Clive Moore, who is part of an historical advisory panel. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, I might begin with you, Professor Moore, because I know you're a little bit pressed for time this morning. You've been researching the history of South Sea Islanders in this country. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd be glad to. South Sea Islanders first came to Queensland in 1863, although there were a small number that were taken into New South Wales in 1847 as well. The main body of people goes into Queensland from 1863 to 1904, and you're talking of about 62,000 labour contracts, but we think it's probably about 50 or 55,000 individuals, mainly males, teenage to about sort of 35, women probably only about 5%, and the whole process was a fairly shameful one in Australian history.
Now, it's been almost 150 years since the first boatloads, I guess, were brought over. Is this population still largely unrecognised?
Yes, that's true. The population initially came from islands that are now included in Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands predominantly, and from about 80 different islands. So they were never, in a sense, one group of people. They came from a large area of the Pacific. They became called Kanakas or Australian South Sea Islanders when they were in Australia, and early in the 20th century, there was what's called the deportation, when the Commonwealth government forced thousands of them to return to their own islands, and the community was fairly collapsed by that and devastated by it, and didn't really come together as a political unit until beginning again in the 1970s. From the 1970s to the 1990s, they very quietly fought to have themselves recognised as a distinct ethnic group and a disadvantaged group in Australia. And that was done through the Everett Foundation, a human rights report in 1992, and then recognition in the Federal Parliament in 1994, about the same time recognition by New South Wales through the then Premier, and by Queensland in about 2000.
Now, you've been involved with this historical advisory panel. Can you tell us a little about who else is on the panel and what the main aim of it is?
The panel has several people on it. Myself as the person who's been longest term involved in researching South Sea Island history, but also Associate Professor Gracelyn Smallwood, who's of South Sea Island and Aboriginal descent from James Cook University, Associate Professor Steve Mullins from Central Queensland University, and Associate Professor Doug Hunt from James Cook University, and also a South Sea Island representative from who's working at the Southern Queensland University, Dr. Nabongi, and they're the main people. There are others involved, but they're the main group, so that they really cover a large amount of areas of expertise in South Sea Island history.
Now, there was, over that time, there was a lot of marriages, intermarriages between Indigenous Australians and the Kanakas, weren't there?
There was. Approximately about 1/3 of Australian South Sea Islanders have Indigenous ancestry. It's mainly Aboriginal, although more recently there's intermarriage into Torres Strait, and of course the Mabo family is a very good example of that, with Eddie Kofi Mabo from Murray Island, and his wife, who's now the patron of the National Australian South Sea Islander Organisation of South Sea and Aboriginal descent.
Excellent. And I might bring in Emelda and Aunty Shireen Malamu at this point. You guys have been working on establishing the national body, and it seems to be going well.
Yes, look, what's happened is this national, very important conference came out of initially Brisbane area, where Chief Colin Terrere actually hosted a forum where delegates from Vanuatu attended to speak about how do we open up this dialogue for our communities, and how do we heal what's happening between our motherlands and Australian South Sea Islander families. And Wantok came out of that, and there was a steering committee that was born, and we worked towards the delivery of a conference in Bundaberg, which was very successful. And again, the contingent of 40-plus Pacific Islanders in attendance. And now we walked away from that conference with a proposal to set up or come back with a structure for the national body. Now, we've got a great strategy team, and Dwayne Vickery, who's also working for Congress, is heading that team, as well as Graham Tanner and Pastor Ray Minicon and Murray Geisler. And they are working in with the board and the Historical Advisory Panel to come up with the best structure that would represent us as a peoples across Australia and the Pacific. So, slowly but surely, it's a lot of work. We're unfunded. It's all voluntary capacity to date, but we are pressuring the Commonwealth to now step up to the play and follow through on their commitment from 1994 recognition.
I might just say thank you to Professor Moore for joining us this morning. I know you have a previous engagement that you have to get to, and
yes,
thank you.
My pleasure.
Much appreciated, Clive.
Yeah. Okay, that was Professor Clive Moore. Now, also, Emelda, how'd you go about getting Bonita Mabo as your patron?
Aunty Bonita, as you know, is a great advocate in the community for Aboriginal, Torres Strait and South Sea Islander affairs. And she's very much a part of our community and families. And Aunty Shireen has strong relationships with Aunty Bonita. And when she called me to confirm her acceptance, we were elated. I mean, Aunty Bonita knows us just, through community and family. So she hasn't got a problem with supporting us whatsoever, but we just know that this will throw us into the limelight, and it will assist the Commonwealth with taking note and really saying, okay, these guys are serious now because of the history of the Mabo family and the Mabo case.
So will that be her main role, is to promote the cause?
Yes, most definitely. Aunty Bonita's ready to work, she said. She said, sorry I didn't get back to you sooner, but I'm ready to work. So where to from here? She's accepting an AO in Canberra this week. We did an interview with SBS Television, which will be aired on Friday afternoon. Aunty Shireen, myself, Professor Moore, and our Vice President, Danny Togo, was in Canberra yesterday, and we were speaking to Bob Carr's office and Senator Kate Lundy about, how do we best move forward? How do we get the Commonwealth to commit and follow through? And they found this of great interest. National Indigenous Times were there as well. So they came down and interviewed us because they're very excited about the fact that Aunty Bonita will be supporting the cause and forming a formal representation is what's needed, and the strategies and the protocols, working protocols that we bring to the table, and how we bring this community together cohesively. So I think the Commonwealth are impressed, and Senator Kate Lundy has committed to working with us in looking at strategies of funding. So there might be better days ahead.
Let's hope so. It always comes back to funding.
It does. It does.
Now, Auntie Shireen Malamu, as an elder, it must be a realisation of a dream for you to see the community organising itself.
I think it's timely. Can I say here that Aboriginal people worked in the cane field in the Mackay district in 1874. There was not enough Aboriginal workers to provide ongoing labour, a labour force required by the plantation, and many Aboriginal people grew dissatisfied with the work, the conditions, a meal and half a stick of tobacco. And I will say here that that was the start of black slavery. Australia was in America. They finished the slave trade in the 80s.
1863.
Yeah, 1863, and it just continued. It just continued with black peoples. It was not isolated. And this is what they brought about. And 15,000 young men died here, unmourned, unknown. And I think it's time that this is looked at. Not an apology either. We want more than that.
Powerful.
Definitely.
Most definitely. And so therefore there'll be a series of documentation that's released, and it's factual information. This is not stuff just made up from, our feelings, thoughts, but that's what the historical panel will be responsible for, is unearthing that hidden information. And it will be very surprising to see if we don't get the support that we need once this information starts to hit the airwaves, and it will be distributed freely. We do have a working committee as a part of the Wantok strategy structure, and they are made up of people from all their local regions throughout Queensland and Australia, but predominantly Queensland, that sit on this panel, and they'll be taking that information. We're trying to deal with capacity building in the best way possible, and engaging the community through the leaders within their regions and organisations and individuals in taking these findings to their community groups, getting the feedback, and bringing it to Wantok. Now, Wantok 2013 will be hosted at the State Library Queensland on the 1st, 2nd and 3rd of November. State Library Queensland have come forth with free resources, but we still do need the funding desperately to add all the bells and whistles, I guess, in terms of, all that basic need in terms of printing and things like that. So that's what we're lobbying for, and there'll be a huge contingent coming over from Vanuatu and Solomon Islands and other Pacific areas, and that's a fact simply because recently we've been a part of the World Council of Indigenous Peoples preparatory meeting with National Congress, Les Melzer. We had a meeting with him. We moved forward with the consideration of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. We don't make moves unless we have these discussions and are, accepted with our decision making. So there's ongoing consultation across the board in all areas.
Can I just sort of mention here too that the White Australia policy was brought in by Edmund Barton. 7,000 was sent back and thrown anywhere. Torres Strait, Hopevale, all those communities here, not in their communities, and it's shameful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can see, all over southeast Queensland, I know myself, and you can see in small communities like the ones near Chindra and Fingal at home, we have our own South Sea Islander cemeteries,
Yes.
The community does remember these things, and,
Yes.
and I mean, I imagine you'll have a groundswell of support once this conference is up and running.
Look, we were so surprised at Wantok 2012 at Bundaberg, the amount of people that just showed up, and they came from Adelaide, Melbourne, Tasmania, just far and wide, and it was just amazing to see people advocating for change, and just it was really refreshing. And to see the amount of elders in that room, there would have been 400 plus people in attendance over the 4-day period every day, and people were focused and front and centre. They want change. They want recognition. And the historical information that's going to be distributed in terms of those community stories and the histories, the verbal histories, the oral histories that we have ourselves, will be complemented with our feedback, with community feedback from our elders. And that's what's important, because it'll give a true representation of the history. Professor Moore and those that have worked in this area for many years, non-South Sea, Aboriginal Torres Strait, they are learning out of this process, and we've seen the change in some of their perceptions.
Fantastic.
Since we've set up this organisation, so it's great.
Mm. Now, Emelda, if people want to get in contact with you to find out more information, or even to assist with funding, how do they do that?
Look, it'd be wonderful, and we receive emails, and I have a national database. So the email address is ASSI.PJ@gmail.com, ASSI.PJ@gmail.com, and my mobile number is 0416 300 946, 0416 300 946. Happy to receive calls. We're very responsive, and happy to work and collaborate with the broader community, always.
And just in wrapping up, it's fantastic to see Bonita Mabo keeping active and advocating for such a worthy cause. Congratulations to you both. And
we're so proud.
Yeah, good luck with it all. And thank you for coming into Koori Radio today.
Yeah, look, we'd also like to acknowledge Koori Radio for their ongoing support, and that's something I should have started with initially, and acknowledging traditional owners of the Eora Nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.